So, Avatar, The Way of Water, is the sequel to James Cameron's first film, just simply titled Avatar. And it's been a while since we've been to the world of Pandora with the giant blue aliens known as the Na'vi. It's been quite some time where I get the feeling like some people are going to be like, okay, why are we coming back to like Dances with Smurfs again? What more is there to do with this material? And thankfully, director James Cameron he finds the ways to to surprise you. He knows what makes for exciting and engrossing like filmmaking. And while it feels like this like a sequel to Avatar could just lean into like more of the same, and in some aspects with some of the tropes it kind of does, it does find some more visual beauty and allure, which let's face it, that's going to be the primary reason why like a lot of people are going to end up going to this film. They just want to see something cool and epic and filled with like action and sci-fi elements. And to that degree, like the story here is pretty light. It's a bit, and when I say it's light, I mean like, you know, it's a little bit lighter than like most films in terms of like comparison to like the first Avatar film. It's a little bit of a heftier story, and I think it's mostly just because there's a lot more going on and a lot more characters to follow, where it's not just, you know, like the simple like, you know, like anti-imperialism story and like, like, and a star-crossed romance and all that. It feels like there's a lot more to explore with the characters that are set up here, and also just the world of Pandora, and like the grander elements of just like togetherness and accepting diversity, which I think is like the bigger overall theme. Because there's a lot going on here, but that's like one of the central things that brings everything together and connects it pretty well within this narrative. So when I say like there's more going on, that there's basically means there's more characters. So there's a lot for everyone to do here, and there's plenty of time to just get lost in the world of Pandora once again. You have Sam Worthington once again playing Jake Sully, who you might remember from the last film. He's now completely become a Na'vi. He permanently had his brain placed into like his Na'vi avatar. And he's basically lived among like the tribes of like the avatars, you know, who are all about the trees. You know, they love like the trees, but there are other tribes that we learn more about as this film goes on. But he's basically conflicted about, you know, what matters most in life, because he settles down with Natiri, once again played by Zoe Saldana, and they have a bunch of children together. Some of them are their own that are born from them. Others are adopted. One of which is like a weird like miracle child of the avatar of Sigourney Weaver's character. So they found a way to get Sigourney Weaver back in this film. And another is a human, simply called Spider, who has grown up on Pandora and could not leave since he was born around the time when like the humans were forced off of Pandora. So he's established a family and realizes that family is more important to him than anything, and realizes that he wants to protect them more than just kind of like fight for his tribe. Because we get like a little bit of like a similar conflict here, like, because once again the humans return to Pandora and they're much more efficient and much more violent. Stephen Lang once more plays a colonel who is after Jake Sully, and you might say to yourself at first, like, wait a minute, hang on, Stephen Lang, didn't his character die in the last Avatar? Pretty much. But yeah, I'll say this film tries to find the easy ways to get back into establishing like similar story elements, but also weave back in characters. So even though like Sigourney Weaver and Stephen Lang both died in the last film, they found a way to bring them back. And I love how it's just kind of like it's just simply stated. It's just like okay, here's how they got back. We're just gonna run with these characters again. We're gonna thankfully they explore a little bit more about them that's different. Like, I like that Sigourney Weaver is portraying more of like a teenage character who has kind of like an interesting look to her. Like it kind of looks like a younger Sigourney Weaver in her Na'vi form, if that makes any sense. And it was also kind of cool to see like Stephen Lang as, you know, as his he spends the entire film in like his Na'vi avatar. So it was kind of cool to see these characters like in a different light, but also with a much different perspective and drive for the world. So with the humans once more invading, Jake realizes that, okay, like, I'm going to endanger the tribe, especially since the Colonel is mostly just after me. Like, the Colonel doesn't even care about, like, occupying Pandora at this point. It's just to get revenge on Jake. And he's willing to go over the heads of just all the other, like, humans occupying Pandora just so that he can kill Jake. So realizing this, Jake sets off for a water tribe with his family, because that's what matters most to him. And if you're familiar with James Cameron, you know that he loves, like, deep sea life and the oceans and all that and just aquatic life. So there's a very long extended sequence here of just exploring this water tribe of Pandora, where, like, all the Na'vi have evolved to basically be more attuned with the water. Like, instead of, like, just embracing trees, they embrace, like, the life force of the ocean, and they spend lots of time just underwater, just admiring all the wildlife. And I love that this type of film that is so big and has all these special effects can just take time out to just appreciate, like, the beauty of it all. Like, there are so many dazzling sequences underwater where it's just characters just swimming around, just exploring wildlife, just making new friends. Like, at one point they befriend a bunch of whales who have been injured. They get to learn more about them and their tribe and their culture and how they interact with them. And it's just, and it's mostly just like them hanging out with it. Just hanging out with this new form of, like, aquatic life. And it's beautiful to look at. And the thing is, like, I'll bring this up. Like, the film, if you're planning to see this film, set aside some time. It runs 3 hours and 10 minutes long. And it is very long, but I feel like that type of length kind of works for this type of film, because Cameron wants you to get so used to this world that you absorb just, like, the ambiance of it, and it's fun to just get lost within it all, where you're not even, like, so much concerned about, oh, where's Stephen Lang's character, what are the humans doing, how are they gonna fight back against this character, and when's the action gonna come. There's a long sequence where it's just admiring this tribe and their daily life and how they interact, and the day-to-day problems that they have of trying to, like, integrate and not feeling like they belong, while also just coming to terms with themselves and having a bit of introspection while getting in touch with nature. And I was surprised how well this worked, because this was, like, the first film I think I've seen since like before the pandemic that was in 3D. It was in IMAX 3D at about 60 frames a second, I think it was, that I saw this at. And at first I thought, okay, we're going to go through 3D again. How's this going to work? But then I remembered, okay, it's James Cameron. He's going to make the 3D work. There were a lot of 3D films that followed after Avatar that plain sucked with 3D. But Cameron actually does put a lot of work into it. He knows the type of shots that he wants to have, and he wants to have full control over the 3D, where it works enough where you get engaged. Because, like, at first, the 60 frames and the 3D aspect hits you immediately when you see the various, like, floating islands and, like, the wildlife of Pandora, and, like, how those, like, little bits of, like flakes of skin in the air, or, like, little bugs and stuff that kind of, like, come into, like, the foreground, and it gets you used to it. Like, at first you're a little bit dazzled, but then, like, you get used to it. And then just when you think you've gotten used to it, because you're back within, like, the wooded area of Pandora, you go to, like, the underwater tribe, and you get to see a whole new aspect of Pandora, and get to just for lack of a better term, just let it wash over you. And it kind of works, because I like this. I don't know, there's just something about it where I like this element of just lying back and just letting, just taking in the sights and just admiring, how beautiful they look. And I like that there's not, like, a whole lot of, like, extra dialogue to kind of, like, ruin it. Like, a lot of these scenes where it's just showing off, like, how cool Pandora is, and, all this, like, all this fun sci-fi stuff that's going on, and just, like, the beauty of it all doesn't have to be acknowledged. Like, I feel like in a lesser film there would have to be so many sequences where the characters would have to remark like, oh, it's so beautiful, it's so gorgeous, or this is pretty. It's like, no, Cameron knows that this world is pretty. He knows that it's gorgeous, and he knows that a lot of the audience coming in is going to be amazed just with the incredible world that he's assembled here, that he doesn't need to point it out. It happens, and I guess it helps too that like when the Na'vi are underwater, they can't really talk. Like they can do a little bit of sign language to communicate with each other, but for the most part, it's just them getting starry-eyed. It's just like, getting used to all these new creatures and this different underwater environment, and it's just it's just such a fun. I guess like not even fun. I guess it's just like I'm trying to find the right words to describe it. Like I don't quite want to say like transcendent or something like that, because I feel like that almost might be a little bit pretentious. But it's just it's such a beautiful sight. I guess that's the best way to describe it. Yeah, it's beautiful to look at, and Cameron lets you linger enough on all the details to just like know and love this world and just become absorbed within it all. That being said, that's not saying like there's no conflict. Like this isn't like some like it's not like an avant-garde experience. There is some conflict. There is some action. You will get to see some new mech suits from the humans. You will get to see the many Na'vi characters, engage in combat with like arrows, and they have internal conflicts, or they punch each other. All that stuff is there. But the build up to it is like my favorite aspect, because like by the time we get to the fourth act, or I guess depending on how you look at it, like the fifth act, depending on how you read the runtime. But I guess when you get to the fourth act, like the action, like it's not bad. It's still fun. It delivers on all the stuff you expect from James Cameron when it comes to like action films, especially with his use of like water and these. And I'm trying to find like the right words, but like seaplanes, I guess is the right word. Like they're almost like sea carriers, I guess. But he uses them well in like this great like kind of sequence where like the ship is capsizing, and there's explosions and gunfire, and there's boats swarming all around, and Na'vi are like shooting arrows, and the humans are like shooting back at them. All like the fun action stuff. But And while I do like that sequence, especially with how like it ends with bringing all the characters together and finding like the core of the film, the heart that leads up to that is what I love most about the film. Especially with like the way that you get to know all the different characters, like all the kids within Jake Sully's family. You get to see like the older brother who ends up taking too much responsibility. You get to see the younger brother who is who's committed to like proving himself and going against orders, and has to learn the hard way that you got to work together with everyone. You have Sigourney Weaver's character, who I found her character very fascinating, because they established that she has some secretive power that she can better tap into wildlife and kind of like control the fish of the sea when she like taps into kind of like like kind of like the tree spirit, but it's kind of like coral, I guess. Basically she can tap into like the natural forces of Pandora, and it's pretty cool to see that. But I also admired the fact that they kind of acknowledge that she has epilepsy, and that she's worried that like that she won't be able to like to do as much. So I kind of found it interesting, because like Spider also has a similar problem of like feeling like he won't be accepted by the Na'vi. Jake also has the problem of like being a Na'vi who has 5 fingers instead of like the 4, I think, that the Na'vi usually have. So there's always this concern about acceptance and inclusion, for being different and having these differences in you. And I thought it was kind of neat how it kind of worked it into the story. It's not like the greater drive of it by like like it's not fully acknowledged like like you do have some worth to society, despite these differences that we have. Like they kind of acknowledge it, but not in the way where it's like, okay, if you go too far down this route, you're going to get into a little bit of dark territory where like you have to prove yourself in order to be valid, which I'm kind of glad they didn't do. I like the fact that this type of story about diversity is fairly light, where it gives the characters enough to do and enough to explore, where you're kind of fascinated to see how they will grow within this tribe and how they kind of learn to live among the different aspects of Pandora. In terms of like villains, though, like they really make the humans kind of like very easy to hate. Like Stephen Lang leads an entire team of human Na'vi avatars who are all just jerks, just mercenaries who chew bubblegum, who are aggressive, who lift weights, who wear Viper sunglasses, and they team up with a group of poachers who poach like the nectar from inside like these whale creatures that they basically just want to sell. So they're just greedy poachers, and they're just scummy people who you know are going to die at some point. And thankfully, the lead poacher has probably one of the funniest deaths that involves an amputation. Just enough of an amputation that you could get away with in a PG-13 film. That works really well here, where it's kind of like, okay, that's darkly comedic, kind of how it was staged, where you didn't expect that kind of death. Like, there's a lot of death going on, but you didn't expect that to happen. But maybe you might. I mean, it's James Cameron, the guy who gave us like the propeller guy in Titanic. So I guess you kind of got to expect that. So it's more or less, I guess, what you've come to expect from Cameron. Because like a lot of people were kind of just coming to this film like feeling like, oh, I don't know, are we willing to come back to Avatar again? And a lot of people are kind of remembering, oh yeah, when Cameron first started with Avatar, a lot of people were hesitant, and they came in, they saw the film, and they were kind of wowed by it. Over time, that opinion's kind of changed, especially since when you focus on the narrative, it's very much a bare bones narrative, like, you know, about like Dances with Wolves. And I'm sure, and I have no doubt that probably over time, this narrative will be seen as a little bit more simple in terms of just, you know, trying to juggle these somewhat simple themes of like diversity into giving just enough of the ensemble cast enough to do. But in terms of like the way it's set up for this film, I feel like the script is a little bit better just because I feel like there's enough going on. On that same level, though, I almost kind of feel like I would have liked to spend a little bit more time with the characters, which I know that's a huge ask for a film that's well over 3 hours long. But I felt like Natiri was kind of bookended in this film. It felt like her only worth was in like the first act, and then she only gets to like prove herself and kind of like show more of her maternal instincts in the fourth act, which, don't get me wrong, it's cool to see what she does in the fourth act, but she mostly just takes a backseat to the kids and a little bit to like Jake. Jake is a little bit more in the background within the middle section of this film, which I kind of understand because there's a lot more interesting stuff going on with the kids. It's much more fascinating to see like kind of like the new generation that kind of grows up dealing with a much more diverse family that's, you know, especially a family that has like adopted children into it and feeling like they are different and feeling like they don't belong, and learning that, you know, if they band together as a family, you know, that togetherness will save them. Which, as hokey and, you know, saccharine as that might sound, it kind of works for this narrative, which mostly just wants to lavish in this CGI world, which, you know, for all the allure that you know, a lot of people will probably just scoff at it for the fact that it's all CGI for like 90% of the film. I gotta admit, for throwing us into this world of Pandora, it's still dazzling to come back to. It's still the sight. Because I know that a lot of people just say, oh, it's just a bunch of CGI that's like neat to look at, but it's like, yeah, that's what it is. Like, that's what most James Cameron films are. It's fun stuff to look at up on the screen. Like, you know, going back to all of them with like, you know, with Terminator 2 and Titanic and True Lies, like they're all just big, huge blockbusters. That's just amazing to see that the world that he assembles, the action that it has, and a little bit of the charm that he assembles within the characters. And most of the stories are light, pretty much. But I will say that, yeah, like there's more going on within the script where I feel it works. And it's just amazing just to see all the underwater sequences, and everything about Pandora is just dazzling, that there's rarely a boring moment. There's moments where I kind of, especially towards like the fourth act, it's like, okay, I see where this is going with like the battle and the action. This is cool, but you kind of question like how long this is going to go on, because I had a lot more fun with just characters just lingering and having fun and just exploring the ocean than I did with like the Na'vi tackling mech suits and these like giant crab robot creatures more than anything else. Like especially there's a great moment where Sigourney Weaver's character is just trying to get in touch with Pandora, and it's just lying down in the shallow part of the beach, just admiring like the caustic lights of the that are reflected in the sand. And it's just it feels like such like a nothing moment, but the fact that you get to linger on it and just admire like the beauty of how it's assembled, and just take a time out before like all the explosions and the action, all the chaos will swarm in on the fourth act. Just have like these little moments of breaks and just admiring the majesty of it all. So on that level, Avatar: The Way of Water, it really does work, because most people are just going to be coming to this film for the experience, to see how cool it looks on the big screen and in like IMAX and 3D with the 60 frames per second, and with all that combined together, it's still a cool experience.